Okay, it looks like we're live. You think I'd have the hang of this by now? I do not. So, yep, that's me. I'm live. So while we're waiting for Licia to get on, Licia's with, if you read the description, Licia's with the Trauma Research Foundation. She is the CEO. The Trauma Research Foundation is one of the leading voices in trauma right now, and as most of you are aware, I had a recent incident, family incident, emergency that prompted this this episode tonight. So, um, yeah. So we're just gonna wait for Alicia to get on. In the meantime, I am going to exercise my technical prowess and try to share this. Um, if the water works well up tonight, please forgive me. I'm trying to maintain, but you're only as tough as tough as the closest one to you to get hurt in a major way or exhibit pain in a major way, and you're not so tough anymore. So you can know all the things you would like to know or think you know. The reality is that it's irrelevant. I can know all the things till I'm blue in the face, have all the concepts down on what trauma is, what it should be, how I should respond to the mechanisms in the brain when I'm triggered by a loved one who's suffering, in a way that makes me want to protect them. And through my good intentions, I've had the best intentions, and that is to I don't want them to feel isolated or different, in any way, shape, or form, by the fact that they have this thing going on. But yeah, they do. So I had to take a back seat to my own ego, and I had to take a back seat to my ego and just really. I mean, it wasn't really a force. It was just an understanding that as much as I would like to compare my experience to my son's, my lived experience, it's so much different. Like it's just it's worlds apart. The exposure to information that they have nonstop, 24/7, it's relentless. And for any adult alive today to think that our experience even remotely relate, I mean, maybe remotely, but on a grand scale relates to theirs, it's somewhat foolish, a little bit ignorant, but I don't believe malicious. I can say that I was somewhat of both of those things, but in no way, shape, or form was I being malicious. I was exercising every bit of training that I had to try to deal with the situation. And I know that Lish is going to come on and have a wealth of tools, but I think this has to be difficult for anyone. And this pandemic has really exacerbated things that have gone on for teenagers for years and years and years and years. It's not, teen suicide is not a new thing, or the thought of it, right? I'm just exercising more of my technical prowess. Excuse me. Alicia will be on soon. She's the more interesting one anyway. She's the one with all the information. I'm not going to say the answers, but the information, the tools, where if we want to exercise them, we can be effective for our people. So, like I said, I'm going to go on here. I'm going to try to share this thing. Says that I'm going to try to share this. There I am. If and there's a delay. I see. Okay, so I'm definitely live. People are watching, and you get to see me stumble, as I typically do, technically. So I think I shared it. I think I shared it on my page. Tonight would be a good night. I think I'll be able to pay attention to questions as they come in, and as they do, I'll try to relay them to Licia. I'm not sure if Bessel's going to pop on or not. I know they're extremely busy with their work. Yeah, I didn't really realize how this this pandemic, the lockdown, and everything else that's been getting shoved in adults' faces, not to mention our kids through social media and everything else. Just the amount of nonsense, right? The political nonsense, we have our elected leaders acting like children, and there's really no role models if they're not in the home, right? And a lot of people are out there fighting for survival right now. They're just trying to fight to live one day to the next. People have lost their jobs, and it's just one of those things where you can't win for losing. You know, I'm fortunate to be in a position to where I could kind of navigate the storm in a predominantly healthy way. And it's not that I came out unscathed, because this is not unscathed what I'm dealing with my son, and then the effect that has on the immediate family and even on my work and his school, and everybody that kind of gets sucked into to these types of situations. But yeah, it's definitely not unscathed. That would be the wrong word, but I feel I'm not as negatively affected as others have been, and I know that from people in my family and close friends, not so close friends, people in the networks of the self-help and meditation groups that I'm a part of, my spiritual community. There's been some real pain and suffering, and yeah, to think that the trickle down effect would not land on our children in the way that it has was, like I said, it was um, wasn't malicious. That's all I can say, is it wasn't malicious. I had to change this link last minute, so I want to make sure that Alicia got the new link. I'd say I'd be right back, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna be right here in your face, fumbling around on my phone. Um, and let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got it. But I was saying, tonight would be a good night to chime in with questions. If you're dealing with an issue where, oh, wait, let's see. I think Alicia is on. She might have joined the other one. I don't think you can join unless you're, I don't see it here. Sorry, guys. This will all be over soon. It's not won't be painful for too much longer. And I see. Oh, how you doing, Megan? I see you. See you. Thank you for tuning in. This is gonna be a tough one. Let me make sure that I cannot minimize. Okay. And here she is. Here's Licia.
Hi, Vince.
Hi, Licia. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm sorry. I had a couple different links.
That was my fault. That was that was my fault. That's me exercising my technical prowess. I have no business setting these things up, but yeah, I went to a. I have several accounts, so I have the human condition, and then I wound up somewhere in Vince Orlando land. So yeah, that was no good. But how are you?
I am good. I'm still adjusting to the East Coast time zone again a little bit. You know,
You were traveling, right?
we were traveling. Yeah.
We're all over.
Vaccinated. No, we went to one beautiful spot and stayed there. And did what I'm doing now that I'm back. Just we worked.
Yeah, there's a lot of zooming.
A lot of zooming.
Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I'm glad you when I reached out to you, I was kind of a mess. I mean, not kind of, that's me just trying to cover it and make it a little bit lighter. But yeah, I I was as versed as I think I am through my own I'm still very much a patient, right? But I have a deep understanding, and I'm on the other side of it. I can step outside of myself, and I already gave an introduction to who you are, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
you did really? Let me just get a tissue. I'm feeling sneezy.
okay.
Um, what did you say about me?
Well, it's the same. I just said it, that I gave your bio. You're a somatic healer, singer songwriter. You do body work, and
Oh, we're live on Facebook right now, this very minute.
yes, we are. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay.
Uh, but that's what I said about you, and that you're the CEO over at Trauma Research Foundation, and then I mentioned Bessel and the book, and that in my opinion, and I think many others, you're the leading voice, one of the leading voices, but if not the leading voice in trauma research. So that was the intro. Um, so I'm happy that you're here, and that you responded when I reached out and spoke of my son and the situation that he was in. We're being real open about it.
Yeah. How is he doing and how are you doing?
He's 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 better. He's better. Like that was it was a cry for help. Thankfully, right? And I don't. The way it turned out to be a cry for help. He said there was a plan, so that was the scary part. Hearing that divulged,
Mhm.
and I when I was younger, mine was manipulated. I just wanted out of the environment I was in at any cost, and I heard that that was a way to get out. So it was a definite cry for help. I staged a little area but it doesn't. Same age, 12. I was
Yeah.
12 years old too, and we almost wound up in the same place, which was ironic.
Wow.
Um, but so when he was telling his truth,
Hmm.
I caught myself saying, Vinny, look, don't if you have everyone's attention now, so those aren't if that's not what you were feeling, don't say that, because I know what happens next, right? But it was, and I said, okay, well, if it is, then you need to tell the truth, and we need to listen. But so when the police were there, he was telling the police that the pandemic was playing a big part in this, um and I wasn't listening. I was kind of dismissive of that, because he's making excuses, that kind of thing. That's what's going through my head, because I don't think I really want to feed into the levity of what's going on just yet. And then we get to the hospital. There's no beds available for adolescents throughout the state. He couldn't get a bed, so we wound up leaving the hospital 3 days later against medical. And then
Yeah.
it was a Friday. It was the following week. He was at my house, and it was just me and him. 3 good days, 3 really good days, and then Friday night he called suicide prevention. Thank God. And I woke up with police in the house, and so they said, well, this time we sat in the hospital and we waited for a bed, but still there were no beds. So that's when it really registered. Like, I took me back to childhood when I said, I just want to not be here. I meant it. You know what I mean? Like, in that moment, like,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
completely meant it with every ounce of my being, even though I didn't follow through or whatever. I know, I remembered all of a sudden what that felt like. And I was just kind of crushed in the moment. And then I picked myself back up and said, okay, now it's time. I told him, I said, I don't know what's going on up there, but I know it's very real to you. And I'm just going to listen, but it was like, it was devastating, because it showed me that as much as versed as I think I am, when it's somebody you love unconditionally, that drive to protect, that'll take over immediately. And then all the training that I have on myself, out the window. It's like, I just don't want you to feel bad. You know what I mean? Like trying to set the stage for ease, right? I guess. So that's a long answer to a short question, but
Well,
we're
it's a good
navigating through
question.
it.
Yeah, it's a huge question, and you know, those intensely bad feelings that are so bad that you don't want to be here, those are physical sensations. That's a flood of feelings through your whole body about not being safe, not belonging, not having a place to land, not knowing how you fit in, not knowing how you go forward, not knowing how to escape whatever bad feeling you're having.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who live with those sensations and feelings for years.
That is, I've always been able to get to the abyss, to peer into that line of thinking. I've never been. There's always been a hope. I'm here because I've gone through some pretty bad times in my life, but there's always been this shred of innate hope in that,
Mhm.
maybe tomorrow will be better. Not conscious, because I've felt like it can't get any better, but I've never had to live with it perpetually, and when I thought that maybe that's what my son is going through, turns out he's on the spectrum. He's high functioning on the autism spectrum is what they diagnosed him with, and not intellectually, not speech impaired. But he can't manage his emotions, and that just kind of kicked me in. I was like, oh, I've missed that all these years. I've missed that, but you come back to where you are right now. You center and say, how do we move forward? And so that's kind of not kind of, I'm skirting around the feelings of it, but it's what we're doing right now, and he doesn't know, and he shouldn't know how to process this just yet, and I'm just doing my best to walk him through it. But it's really helping me to be more empathetic and understanding of what's going on right now. There is levity to it, and because I've learned to process, and who knows if I am, I could collapse tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like I think I am, but there's a whole world of people that are going through this right now. I mean, it's a 14-year-old kid out here just shot himself because hockey was canceled. You know,
Oh,
I, I said to Vinny, I gave that as an example. I said, Vinny, there was a 14-year-old that he just shot himself because of hockey, and Vinny goes, over hockey? That's dumb. I was like, so I use it as a teat. I said, so me, I don't know what's going on in your head. And so I might jump to that conclusion too, that when you said the pandemic and that was bothering you, did you see how I reacted? I said, we got to be more conscious of other people's experiences.
yeah, and that's the story on the outside with that kid. You don't know what was happening on the inside with that kid. And so
True.
you could call it hockey, and what you might not know is what kind of a safe haven that hockey community was for this person. You
Right.
don't know you don't know anything really about what goes on internally with somebody who's suffering that way, because that kind of despair, Bessel calls it God forsaken. That feeling of being
Mm.
God forsaken means that it's a level of grief and being bereft and alone in a way that you don't know how to make that connection. And our connections with each other are the thing that nurture us from the beginning of life through the end. Our connections are how we make meaning about ourselves in the world. We have to relate to the world around us, and you could say, yeah, you could go out into nature and have that. You don't need people, but most people biologically need people in some way. There's some core way that we are interconnected, and
Mm.
when you lose that sense of connection, of who to be connected to and how to have agency in your life, there is a depth of despair there that people can suffer with alone.
Yeah. Well, that's really the only way to suffer with it, right? Because you don't know how to make. I remember not knowing how to make a connection. I don't know what was in me that said that maybe there is, but I remember, I know what it's like to, through PTSD, and I know what it's like to feel alienated, to always be looking over my shoulder, to never kind of fit into my environment.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was something, and I think it was, there were very two distinct parts to my upbringing. There was, my father, who was the violent, abusive, you know you're never going to be shit. That was beaten to my head at a very young age. And then my mother would pull me aside. She was also a punching bag, and she would say, Vinny, you can be whatever you want to be. You know what I mean? So I had these two people talking to me, and when I would feel at my lowest, I think there was that other voice that would chime in, and then I would overcompensate for that despair by being an overachiever in something, or going out and being an actor and achieve, whatever that was. I would try. I guess I had some innate ability to at least get pats on the back, and that's what I would utilize that. And I it makes me wonder, if I didn't have that, how deep does that despair get at a very young age, and how
Well,
painful is that?
and you know, you're a really bright person. You're a very energetic person, and um, you had the tenacity to figure out what you didn't know. Um, and it sounds like your primary caregiving people didn't really have the capacity to model that or show you with how they related with you.
No, no, no. It was, and it wasn't their fault. There was a point in my life where I just realized, through my own mishaps, that they were doing the best they could with what they had. And
I
once I
I know.
once
Yeah.
I realized that, it was like this huge weight went away, and I didn't have to feel angry anymore.
Right, right. But the thing is that usually we learn how to sync up with people and be attuned with other people and even make friends, how to engage with others in a way that they want to engage with us, how to be reciprocal with other people. We learn that non-verbally, from the first coos and goos and
Hmm.
verbalizations and vocalizations back and forth before there's any overt meaning that's language. We're learning how to be physically in sync with each other. That's what parents and babies do. And that's what morphs into language and ability to interact with other people. And 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 the feeling of safety when you reach out to engage with another person with the expectation that they're going to meet you energetically and intentionally in some way, that attachment and synchrony and socialization, that's something that if if you're rejected by the people who are supposed to show you how to be accepted, how do you figure out how to take those risks? I mean, it's a risky thing to go in front of people that you don't know anywhere.
Yeah.
But how do you feel inside your own body that it's a safe thing for you to meet the unknown? Um,
You it's
yeah. No, I'm not asking as if you have
you,
to answer. I'm just saying that's the dilemma, isn't it?
yeah, no, you put me in deep contemplation on that, because now I'm thinking, well, I know for me, like I said, I overcompensated, and I had some tools that I just happened to have, and God bless, or whatever it is that bestowed those on me. I I I for me personally, I became not suicidal, but I didn't fear death, so I would take really big risks. And it was like things that almost killed me on multiple occasions. Like, I would just do them because maybe I felt, I don't know. It was a strange thing, but I
It
think
felt
about,
like before alive, more alive.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
talked about people who go out on motorcycle rides and things because that's what makes them feel alive and present in their body in a way that they don't otherwise.
and it's true, it did, because I didn't have really trust anything or anybody in the world. Like, Bessel talks about disorganized attachment. That's where I got it. When I read his book, it's funny, when we were doing the other thing, he laughed. He said, how'd you read my book and just not, he's like, usually people get to the first chapter and they set it down. And me, it was like, cause I was understanding myself for the first time academically, logically. Like it was, I had learned through cognitive processing therapy to feel, to get that visceral feeling. And, but then through his book, I was like, oh, that's what that is. And it just all, so when I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, you know, cause it was a microscope into me.
Yeah.
Um, and I tried to apply that to my son, and that was the wrong thing to do because his lived experience is so much different than mine. You know, the gut response is, well, I've broke the cycle. You know, I've, you know, on the surface, like, you know, he's never had to want, he's never been beat. There's all these things that I started, oh, me. I, you know, tried to not subconsciously started making it about me. Oh, where did I go wrong? And I'm sure I did have some missteps, but I made it all about me. And I wasn't in that. I couldn't really listen to what he was saying. And the way these kids are bombarded with the internet and these ideas on, like, you know, he told me the other day, he said, me and my friends at school, we talk about our homicidal thoughts. What? What are you talking like that? Like it's normal. Like they're just talking about it. And maybe it is. I don't know. I don't remember having homicidal thoughts. I remember having thoughts of not wanting to be here, and not feeling really embarrassed about voicing those back in my day. Like you just didn't talk about that kind of thing because you get over it. It's in your head, get over it.
Right.
But what is so, the common language to them is frightening. But that we got to step up, right? Like it's not going to go away. We can't make that go away, and we can't shield them from it. We can only do it to the best of our ability. So I have to be there to I got to quit saying kind of. I have to be there to talk him through these things, and I fall short sometimes. I don't know what to say sometimes when he says something about homicidal thoughts. What?
So I can I ask you? I mean, you're talking about really personal things, and my question is, what kind of professionals are you working with? What kind of support do the two of you have to connect on a deeper level, or just ground all this energy in a way that it doesn't feel so urgent? It feels like there's a lot of agitation still. I feel a little agitation in my system as I hear you talk about these things, and I wonder. I mean, it sounds like it was really alarming when he started talking about his homicidal thoughts. And
It it was, and we are, the odd thing is I had just he had just called the CPS on his mother. Um,
I don't know what CPS is.
Child Protective
Oh
Services
yeah,
out
yeah.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, so he called them. It was really, he didn't like his electronics being taken away on a Friday because he went back to sleep for his virtual. He's in school 4 days a week and then virtual on Friday. So anyway, he did that, and from that point, um, that was an indicator that something was off, right? So I reached out to somebody who is versed in EMDR, and she actually was real excited by the episode when she knew that we were doing the episode with you and Bessel.
Mhm.
She was versed on Body Keeps the Score, so I said, okay, well, this is somebody we can work with. So we had set up the first appointment. Well, the attempt happened before the first appointment,
Yeah.
so it's kind of, so we're working with her now. You know, and we'll be back on Friday, and we're going weekly if it has to increase. So she is there, and she's kind of easing the but there is, I don't know if it's agitation, it's fear. I mean, maybe it's the same thing. It's
Well, there,
that,
there's a level of arousal to all of our feelings.
right.
And
Okay.
with fear, it depends on how immediate the threat feels, how urgent or immediately do you have to respond to it. Is it like an ambient fear of like the dark, or is it a fear like there's something that's going to happen that I'm really afraid of? And
You're sensing that kind of.
no, I just, what does your nervous system feel like when you talk about all of this?
It feels, so I'm battling my own PTSD, right? I can feel it coming in to where it's trying, it wants to push me into fight or flight,
Right.
and I'm resistant I'm not going to let that happen. I know that that's not based in reality. That's the gut response. That's the visceral response is, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
something has to happen now. And then I have to dial it back within myself. And, you know,
And
and our,
notice, yeah.
yeah, so our reactions have been mostly positive, but there's those times where I feel like he's running into traffic, and then I elevate my tone to a point to where I have to come back and say, Vinny, I shouldn't have handled that way. So it is. I recognize that it's triggering me, and for the it's what I it's a. I think I know we'll get through this. And the it's making me stronger, and it's making his sister stronger. Turns out his mom may be on the spectrum as well, and that's part of the constant environmental. So, and I know this is personal, but I meant it to be, because from my experience with dysfunction is things get swept under the rug, and this is something I would have avoided
So
prior.
I should have asked you earlier, is it okay with your son that we're talking about him?
Yeah, yeah, and I know he wants to come on and speak
Sure.
himself, but he right now it's not. It's
Yeah.
he's real honest about his. He says I want to. I just don't feel like I can. On so yeah, he's real open one on one with people. Which makes me feel a little bit proud, because we practice that way, right?
Mhm.
Openness, just be open no matter how bad it is. And but that doesn't mean he feels good about the situation.
So, so what kinds of activities are you able to find together during this time when everything is so locked down? So he's in school in person 4 days a week,
Yeah, 4 days a week. Yeah.
and I don't know what phys ed looks like in a school that's only open 4 days a week during a pandemic. I don't know what extracurricular activities and music
Mm.
and art look like during a pandemic.
Those are limited anyway, just because he's in a Montessori, so they.
Oh, so that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, he's been in Montessori since he was 2 years old. So
Uh-huh.
so they do they do a lot with physical and movement and independence, so that's good. Extracurricular, those suffer. It's a charter, so it's just not one of their emphasis, but they get their recess. It's just pandemic, everything has been kind of diminished. So yeah, it's not. I am getting him back into jujitsu on Friday. So that's something that he did enjoy, and obviously with the pandemic that wasn't available. So it's available now. I don't know how that works exactly, because we still have our restrictions to a certain degree, but they say they're open. So I'm going to get him back in there, and I know that was beneficial to him prior. So we're going to get back into that. He I'm trying not to push too hard when he says he wants to be alone. So we have our backyard as a park, and there's woods and then a park right behind it with trails. And so he took a walk the other day, and I'm just trying to be respectful without enabling. It's a balance. It's all new, it's all new, but I'm trying to interject what I can that I feel is healthy, by at the same time respecting that there's something going on that I don't quite understand fully. So another long answer to a short question, but
No,
um
I think that this time, this adolescent period, before you're really mature into a full teenager, is a really awkward, challenging time anyway.
can't imagine. Yeah, it's awkward anyway, but to do it now
Yeah,
under
yeah.
this 24/7 bully cycle, basically, where you constantly bombarded with these images that tell you you're not good enough, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I was trying to explain to him, wherever you go, whatever you search for, it's going to be the truth, right? Like if you want the earth to be flat, you'll find your people, and it will be flat, and you'll have the information you need to base all of that on. No matter what you want to believe, it's there's somebody out there that's going to validate that for you.
Mhm.
And the internet makes it possible. No matter what it is, it doesn't, there's conspiracy theories. There's red is blue. You're right. Like there's
Yeah.
somebody out there that's going to validate that, and there's going to be papers you can read that tell you why. So yeah, I I'm grateful that I didn't grow up with this. And now it's but as an adult with a kid who's about to be a teenager in July, um, I I'm grateful that I'm on the other side of my condition, to at least be able to navigate it this effectively. Is it going to be effective? I believe it will, because I let them know that I'm fallible. I admit my mistakes immediately. So as soon as I feel like I've made them. Um, so who knows? Who knows? You know, it's life is a tricky thing, and when you think you got it figured out, it lets you know that you don't. You don't have this figured out, and you better keep your study cap on, because there's some more curveballs it can throw at any given point, and it's it's uh it's tough as it's been. From a spiritual perspective, I can say it's beautiful. I really can. I can say that it took me into my 30s to finally realize that maybe something's wrong with the way I operate. You know what I mean? And it took near death experiences and substance abuse, and I was pushing any way I could, just testing whatever's up there, saying, "You gonna take me now? You gonna take me now?" And my metric was, well, I didn't die, and if I didn't die, I would take it a notch further, and that was my entire life. So maybe, with people who are listening to him, because we're listening, everyone around him is listening now, and we're just trying to take it in, and trying not to judge with our own experience. And if we listen, maybe he doesn't have to go through that. Like maybe this is his thing right now, and he doesn't have to wait till he's 33 to be bombarded with some type of addiction or compulsion, or or have to test his fate every weekend to see if it's going to be his time.
Yeah.
So I can try to pull the positive out of this, and I think that's the best thing for
And
all of us.
being a parent, I think the teenage years are the scariest years to be a parent.
I wasn't looking forward to him, but this.
Uh, you know, I'm sure I was not a piece of cake as a child myself. Um, but when you're trying to figure things out and you don't know where you fit in, it makes it really, really hard to want to trust anybody,
It's hard.
even your parents. And you know, I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the life of my kids and their friends and their partners. I'm speaking on the other side, way on the other side of teenagehood, because they're in their 30s.
Okay.
Um, but when my kids were teenagers, I was scared.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. You just, you know, kids do things. They go off and drink and they party and they paint their hair and their nails and wear weird clothes and scowl at you when you say hello. And, part of that's like normal, I guess, the differentiation and stuff. But it's a scary thing to go through because you don't know what they're going to be like when they come out the other side.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of tenacious love that you have to have with teenagers.
That's the best way I've heard it phrased, is this tenacious love.
And you have to be able to work on that connection even when you think they don't like you, even when you think they don't love you, even when it feels like every time you talk to them they're annoyed or rolling their eyes or walking out the door and slamming things. and so your attitude of I'm going to admit when I make mistakes right away, I'm going to try and make repairs. That's tenacity. That's hope. That's your modeling your commitment for your son. And it's really, really important that, I mean, that even if he can't reciprocate, even if he can't say, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, that's
Right, right.
not on his agenda just yet.
Right. And it might not happen until he's 18 or 25. When I was going through hardships as a parent of teens, I had a friend pat me on the back and say, I've been there. I didn't know what was going to happen. And now my grown up child is one of my best friends. And I thought, yeah, right. Your kid was never as hard as mine. And um, you know, I it takes human adults a long time to fully develop a frontal lobe. And what I mean by a frontal lobe is uh, a strong self identity where you trust your intellect and your ability to make meaning and make your way through the world. That I think it's mid to late 20s is when your full, what they call executive capacity fully comes online. So 33 for you, that sounds about right. Maybe a little arrested development. And when you finally got the keys to the car, it just took you a few years to figure out how to drive it. But it's
Yeah,
life, right? And
yeah.
and so the teenage years are kind of like the wild ride training wheels kind of part of figuring out what independence and what your self-identity is going to look like.
And I know how long it took me, and maybe that is a normal thing, and that I'm trying. That's what I try to keep, because the things that I just look back on my childhood, and when I felt really really disconnected and just wanted out of my environment by whatever means necessary,
Uh-huh.
I look back on it and it wasn't that bad, right? I just didn't know how to process what was going on inside of me, and
Yeah,
so
but you tell me enough about your early childhood that you had a lot to untangle, a lot to unravel, a lot to weigh and balance and say this means something to me. This is okay, this is not okay. You had to figure out so many things on your own without a balanced context, without a context of calmness being something valuable. Now,
right,
I've seen plenty of people who don't have trauma and turmoil in their early lives, who can go off to college and make what seem like sound choices and go early into healthy careers and don't seem to have those, what do I call them, existential quagmires to go through.
yeah, yeah.
And and I can be envious of them because there's a way that your creative energy and your energy for making things happen in the world really gets sidetracked by just figuring out how to survive.
Yeah, yeah, that's extremely valid. It's because it all goes there. That's where the energy goes, just survival.
Right.
One
And
day to the next.
being able to tolerate what you feel and that restless feeling, that unsettled feeling, that hyper hyper reactive way of feeling where you don't know where your triggers have to be in order to feel safe,
Or
right?
even that you have them.
Right, right. All that stuff takes a long time to quiet down, to figure out how to make your world and your life safe enough that it's okay to slow down, how to figure out how to like what you like and not like what you don't like without it being a life or death catastrophe,
In a
right?
society that would choose that you continue, that you just keep grinding, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. That's in your head. Let's move forward. You're taking up everybody's time here. Let's move it along.
So the other thing is that, there, I don't know if you've heard of Burgoltz and
Yeah.
Edgeworks.
Yep.
Have you heard of him?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, he's part of our therapeutic alliance team, and he really talks about organizations and programs that create space for kids to have a way to be seen safely, a way for their issues to be processed with some safety, even the smallest everyday things that would like ground you in the moment and let you know where you are and have a sense of connection to community, that there are ways to build those things in. And
I'm
I
digging
know
deeper. I'm gonna write that down. Lou.
Lou Burkholz.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's somebody you might have fun having on your show, actually. He's a
Yeah, no,
really good guy.
I've seen, I've read his quotes, because I'm in that space and I'm always,
Uh-huh.
so I'm going to dig deeper.
He's got a book, um, and he's going to be doing a presentation for us, I think, this summer about his work in programs around the world with underserved populations. He did a program for a few years in Gaza.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with kids who are living under constant physical threat. And he had a program that was culturally meaningful that helped them to feel connected with others in their community and help their families to feel safe being seen together.
That's amazing. When I think of the worst, I was writing something, it was just an exercise because it was something that I really got from you and Bessel, when we were on that, the round table.
Mm.
You talked about the difference, and I don't think you phrased it this way, but the difference in experience. So with the bike, the no trespassing sign,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
that never left. Like that I was like, same place, same time, completely different experience. Even though I understand that, like, it didn't really. I had an epiphany when I watched you two talking about it. I was like, oh
Mhm,
wow.
mhm.
So I was doing this exercise on how to really equate the lack of knowledge into the experience of another human being, um, that you may be that you villainize. So I went into the life of a of somebody who might behead somebody in a cave, in the name of jihad, right? So I went into their area, I went into this meditative space that was really gut wrenching, and this war torn where they're like you said, constantly in physical threat, and what that must be, and for your only way out to be, because it is a cry for love, right? At the deepest sense of it, it's a way, a very twisted way to feel connected to your environment, or the only connection you can have is to have 72 virgins, right? In this other place, that's the only way out when you walk in with a suicide bomb. But Marianne Williamson, she talks about it in Return to Love, where everything is a cry for love, really, at its core, no matter how heinous it may seem on the surface. It's a human being's drive towards some form of connection. And I went into that space, I just, nobody's born that way, right? I don't think anybody is born that way with
Well,
those types of, to wanting to behead somebody in a cave, or with,
no,
no, nobody's born.
nobody's born that way.
Right, there has to be this build, and there's these innocent children that grow up in these environments, and that's what they become, against their, not even against their will. They're just programmed, right? And then they live in these environments, and they're pushed along by adults, and then, so I, to grow up in a space like that, I don't know, to have somebody who can create a way for people to feel safe talking about it and feel connected. That's pretty amazing to me.
Well,
That's
it's not just talking about it, it's really
in that space.
being present through the rhythms of the day, sharing meals, walking to the kids' schools, doing athletics together, meeting the family. There are things to do that help a person to be seen. He in his book he talks about a program in Thailand where the kids had to spend the night in a camp and they were all in these long dorms sleeping in rows, and they were away from their families and away from their parents, and it was hot and buggy. And he said this one camp counselor, instead of hanging out with all the other counselors at the end of the night, went up to talk for a moment of time at the foot of each kid's bed and
Mm,
talk to them about how dark it was and how
mm.
they could hear the voices of the grown-ups, and that they could know that they were going to make an intention for what their dreams were and how they were going to stay connected during the day. And her little bit of time that she spent with them in that way helped them to ground in their bodies and feel safe enough to get a good night's sleep and
That's
feel less alone because they had a sense of where they were and who they were with that didn't end when the official activities ended. They knew they had a caring adult who was there, who was thinking about
it,
them.
isn't it? I guess it's not crazy. It's just like things that are simple. You know, there's simple things we can do that we miss in the day to day. I didn't know how important the first 3 years were in my son's life. The need to be there
Most
when
people don't know that.
I,
Most people don't know that.
until I read the book. Like I thought trauma caused the PTSD, trauma caused the whatever the affliction was, the
Yeah, yeah.
whatever it was. I thought that was the cause, and through my own therapy and the fact that I I have to know, I want to know things like about myself and about my surroundings, and quantum physics led me into spirituality in a deep visceral way because I
Yeah.
could make a connection. So through that, that's it. Like it really changed the way I view everything in terms of how I deal with people, how I'm dealing with my son now. Like
Yeah.
if this is a successful interaction, and we come out of this, we'll definitely be scathed, but it may be in the best possible way. I'll owe a lot to the book, and I did the work to get there to be able to understand it, right? But at the end of the day, the fact that it exists, and people can read it, and we can talk to people who put their life into this work. It's massive, it's massive. And I got to read Lou's book now. Lou's book, I have to read it. I have to.
It's a lovely book, and it's an easy read, but it he makes some really good points, and what he's really talking about is the things that we take for granted are the
Yeah.
most important things. His whole premise now is, what if love really is the answer? How do we manifest love? How do we ground love? And I just want to say again, your son is almost 13, and you're going to have to give yourself a good 10 or 15 years at least before you can say this episode is done.
Right.
You
Thank
know,
you.
I just um
But that's okay. That's
being vulnerable like that is your life isn't done. You're not a finished.
no,
I'm not a finished.
no.
No,
There's a long way to
and
go.
there's always stuff to unpack. There's always stuff to process, and there's always a way to integrate what you figure out into what you're doing as you go forward.
I'm experiencing it,
Yeah,
firsthand. And it like I said, if it wasn't for people who've been through it, sharing, and people that academically understand, and if it wasn't for all these things combined, this could be very dark, a lot darker than it actually is. And I'm not saying I think I told you So as an actor, I've always stayed away from the collapsing, the Stellas. Stella,
Yeah, yeah,
no, that's nobody emotes. They're nobody. That's just fake. That's actor stuff. Because what I realized when I walked from, so I got back, my son had just checked in, and they told me that you can't see him because of the pandemic.
yeah.
That's salt on the wounds, right? So I come in and I'm trying to busy myself with laundry, and I walk into his bedroom. It was just like like a ton of bricks dropped, collapsed, and I just let out this Stella like wail, and that's all I could do. And I'd never felt like that in my life. So I could have ran from that, and I think I've ran from that my entire life because there's been moments other than this where that was called for. You know what I mean? Like, so when
Yeah.
I got to feel it, like I got to feel it in a way that so rather than rather than let that carry me, I was able to say I was grateful for the fact that I could feel that, and I knew that just based on that alone, that well, this can be better than what I experienced, just based on that alone, because I was able to feel. It's the first time. It's never, and now I'll go there and act. And if I next if I pick a project and that's called for, it opened up a neural pathway immediately, in the same way ketamine did when my son was born, and I didn't know what unconditional love was, and I was like getting hit with this. What is that? What is that? What is that? So in that moment, I've been different. I've been different ever since then, and now I'm just searching. I'm back to, I have this childlike curiosity, but with the urgency that you're speaking about, because it feels urgent. It feels urgent, and it is triggering me.
Yeah.
Um,
You know that cry that you say you've never had before? It,
yeah,
I've heard it referred to as an attachment cry.
really.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that when you were a little kid you must have felt that way at some point. It's a it's a physical feeling that's just so huge, and it's such an intense need for a connection where there's a void.
It was overwhelming. Like over there was no control. That the legs just went out, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I collapsed just straight to the butt, and I'm down, and I couldn't move against the wall, and I'm just letting out this like this wailing. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm kind of going back there now in my head, but it's okay.
And do you feel connected to people? Do you have enough support for you?
yeah, yeah. Any lack of connection I feel, I know now is it's that playing tricks on me. Like I'm very very supported in a lot of ways, from I recognize where the support lies for me, and it's there. It's there, and things like this.
Yeah.
This is extremely important to me that I'm able to. I wasn't able to get out there and speak like this before because I was afraid of how I might react to differing opinions.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a test run for me, and then it started to feel good. So this, your question is people, right? I'm going back to the book and intellectualizing, but the
I'm,
truth.
I'm not intellectualizing with you. I noticed that I'm in the dark. Do you mind if I turn on a light?
Oh no, absolutely not.
I want to just see if I can. That might be a little better.
Oh, yeah, I can see.
It was so bright when I first
Yeah,
came
now I
in
can see.
there. It,
There
and then
you
the
are.
sunset, yeah. Um, the other things that really help us to feel connected are the things that give us rhythms to our daily lives. So sharing meals is a huge predictor in academic success. It's a predictor in the size of a child's vocabulary and their literacy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's really important to have meals together where you sit and talk together, where you sync up and find out how each other's days were, where you see each other. And the teenage years might be a really challenging time to instate that if you don't have it, but um, walking and talking and eating and talking and finding ways to be in a similar rhythm together walk to school together. Um, I, it's just like when people sing together, their heart rates sync up, their
Mm,
breathing syncs when they're
yeah.
singing the same phrase and singing the same notes, and you find that the rhythm of their heartbeats come together.
It's,
When you're able to sit in stillness and be present with each other, a certain kind of safety happens where your nervous system can calm down together in a way that it wouldn't if you're seeing each other on the fly and not having that moment where you actually land together.
that makes
Uh,
absolute sense. It makes absolute sense because the times where we do, there's, I feel better after I think they do. It seems like they do because there's a resistance because it's not common practice. Everything's been on the fly. Life's been on the fly, and I'm glad you said that because it's a fairly easy thing to implement, and it's kind of probably what Lou talks about in the book is that these are things that we take for granted that we have the ability to do. Just do them, because they seem unimportant in the modern world, right? That's not, let's speed through everything, get back to work kind of thing. That's what how I was. That's my environment. Just get back to work. You don't want to be poor, right? You don't want to be poor again. Don't
but
don't do that.
you know, I've seen a number of attachment researchers give their presentations over the years, and this year, Carlin Lyons Ruth is going to give her talk on her take on attachment and early attachment and how that plays out over the course of a person's life. The last time I heard somebody talk about their longitudinal studies on attachment, it was Alan Sroufe, and that's spelled Sroufe. And he's from Minnesota. So I think his study is called the Minnesota study or something like that. Anyway, um, he talks about how the 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 people who studied the subjects, they were studying young mothers, early mothers, teenage mothers, people who maybe didn't have the ideal circumstances to be parents, and the nature of their interactions with their 2-year olds. They followed up on those kids 18 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. And the infants and children whose mothers had the best relationships with them, who looked at them and spoke to them softly and gently and musically and loved them and had reciprocity, vocal reciprocity and physical reciprocity of nodding and moving together, and they can measure the physical synchrony of people's interactions. The ones who had the most, and it doesn't mean the babies never cried. It means that they were able to go in and out of synchrony, and the baby wanted to be engaged with the mother, and the mother wanted to be engaged with the baby, versus ambivalence or
Mm,
depression. The ones who had the healthiest relationships with their mothers were the ones that went on to do well in life, no matter what their economic circumstances were. And the
that's
ones that
interesting.
had the most difficult relationships with their mothers, their primary caregivers, had the hardest time later on in life. But he said that's not a sentence. It's not a death sentence. It's not condemning you that that's the only way out. And so I stood up and asked, what makes a difference for these kids? And he said, the people who see you. It's the teacher who
Mhm.
sees you, or the person in school, somebody who takes the moment to reach out and notice you and validate you. If you're not being validated anywhere in your life and you don't understand your worth in relation to other people, if you don't feel safe even finding out, who's going to see you? Who's going to notice you? Who's going to say, hey? And a lot of those kids are also vulnerable to predators because all children need to be seen.
Mhm.
And there are predators who can recognize who's not being seen, recognize who's open to the stranger, who's open to that adult that will do something extra. I mean, look at the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
God's sake. Um, which is not to say that every priest is a pedophile, but anytime you have those power differentials and you have kids that are lonely and vulnerable and
Vulnerable.
aren't getting their needs met, the very needs that we have to survive can also be the ones that kids get horribly betrayed and hurt by. So, but being able to figure out how to model a healthy situation, be the safe person.
Yeah.
And with you have that possibility with your son to be that. And
It's a work in progress, and that's what gives me hope is that I'm flawed, right? We're all flawed, but I'm flawed, and I still sometimes I react like he's running into traffic. That's the analogy I always make. Like that,
yeah,
it calls for swift action. I got to elevate my tone, and sometimes I'm not making him feel safe, and that so I have to dial it back. And I think the urgency is well, he said he was going to kill himself, and he had a plan to carry it out. So then that's created this hypervigilance in me, which I think I'm navigating through, but I do know what you just said is that that's what I'm trying to model that every time, and it's not often, but there's those slips, and I come back and I say I'm fallible. That I don't say fallible, but I said I made a mistake. Could have handled that better. If there's ever a time where this has happened, please just tell me. So I'm trying to just have it be in his head that you can talk to me no matter what. No matter what, you can talk to me. And it's hard being because I've always been the disciplinarian too. Like the school, I'm going to call your dad. You know what I mean? Like so there's still there's that there too that I have to overcome to a certain degree because there's certain yeah that's balance. It's all balance.
yeah, and
What
I understand that discipline thing too. And looking back on the years that I was a parent for young kids and teenagers, I I think, wow, I thought I had to be a disciplinarian. I thought that was part of the job of being grown up. And now I realize, nah, it's
yeah,
not really, that's not such an important thing. It's really about being connected and being safe.
and it's really easy to be the disciplinarian as opposed to and I think we can hang our hats up on well I rule with an iron fist and I say and I've realized that well, no that's it's part there's you have to find that balance but it really is can they talk to us it's not that you're trying to make friends with them it's that look I'm more than an authority figure. I'm somebody you can talk to, and you don't have to find it on Discord, this little internet thing that they're on all the time, where bad information comes in
Right,
frequently.
but also the thing is that being the boss and being coercive doesn't really do very much. And
For anyone.
I think that a lot of times parents are triggered in parenting situations at the times that they were hurt as kids. So when your kid is young and going through a hard time and it's a time of your life that your parents didn't handle you well, you don't have the eyes to see what the alternatives are. And so discipline looks like the thing that you have to do
It's what just happened,
because
and it's
you don't know what other resources you have available that are better than discipline.
just we just went through it, and like I said, I'm grateful that I've gone through what I've gone through and had the resources that I've had to be able to correct it because that was the go to. That was have to stop this. Have to stop this. This is how it stopped, and it wasn't the right thing.
Mm.
It wasn't devastating, but it wasn't the right thing. And I'm grateful that I was able to catch it when I did. And I'm still susceptible, but I'm seeing it now. I can kind of correlate to really me. Like you said, it's really where I didn't feel safe, where I still don't have the tools, I go to my subconscious programming, those mechanisms that I've always fallen back on. And, this is happening in very rapid time, to where it's interact. Okay, that didn't work. This works, and kind of piecing this all into in almost warp speed. It's challenging, but again, it's beautiful. Like it's beautiful because I can sit here and have this conversation with you,
Yeah.
and this is real time. When we're off, he's downstairs, right? And we're gonna have the rest of the night ahead of us, and today they put him on trazodone to help him sleep at night, and had him on trazodone in the morning, and it was making him a zombie. It was just so today. I said, dude, I said, you're off today. So it's just this Paxil. They put him on Paxil and trazodone. That's what they do when you go to one of those places. It's medication. So today I said, it was affecting him. And I talked to his teachers, and I said, is he getting enough sleep? He's getting a lot of sleep. He's been zombieified or whatever. So today I said, yeah, just Paxil today. Oh, really? Why? Oh, you're off the trazodone. It's no more. You don't have to really. And he was proud. He didn't want to be on it. And today was a good day. So far, so far today's a good day. So I'm learning as I go. And I have to put my preconceived notions on medication. I have to. That's all got to go. Like I have to listen, and then I just have to. Just really trying to zero in on him. Just really pay attention and get out of my own way, because I can stand there in my way pretty well, and convince myself that I'm doing the right things if I'm not mindful. And I'm really, meditation has been huge. The other night I actually went into it. I feel like there was a time when he was 18 months old where I was in a meditative state, and I heard him crying, and I rushed to his room, and I remember pulling him out of his crib and just like holding him really tight, almost like he was dying. But I was like, like there was this really this electrical pulse going through my body that I couldn't stop. The other night, I had just given him his trazodone, and I went into this meditative state, and I just felt, and so I went downstairs, and I'm still buzzing like this, like having this feeling, this pulsating going through my body. And I went downstairs and I sat with him, and I just started talking to him, and I don't even, I wasn't using big words. I said, Vinny, when you see the cat, is her head illuminated a little bit? Does it look real big? He said, yeah. I said, is her tail glowing a little bit? And the TV was glowing around it too. And he said, yeah. And I said, right now, does she look big? He said, no. And then I started patting. He doesn't want to be touched, especially not by his dad. I started stroking his hair. I'm like, I'm in here with you. I think I know. I think I see what's going on. And we just kind of sat there, and I did that, and he started falling asleep, and I gave him a pillow, walked away, went up to my bed, and I laid down. It's probably 3 minutes after the charge went out of my body, and just completely gone. And I was like, I'm gonna go. So I went down and I checked on him. He was out. He was completely out. Like to the point where I had to check his breath because I'm nervous. I don't like what he's taking. And he was fine. He was breathing fine. But when he went out, it left me. And I remembered that time when he was roughly between 18 and 24 months, where I pulled him out of his crib and didn't know what was going on, but something hit me. And I felt like my son was dying in that moment. Strange. But there's times where I just feel like I'm completely in tune. And those were two of the times where, maybe I'm just imagining things. I don't think so. I think I genuinely felt something. And I think that night when he went to sleep, and it just left me, all of a sudden left me, and I became calm, and I went down and he was sleeping. That was pretty, it was pretty deep, it was pretty deep.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's a way that you're still really learning to trust yourself.
There is.
And
It's work.
yeah, and I hope that you can hold yourself with compassion, because if you can do that, he'll have an easier time learning it from you.
That's tough. That's and that's. I'm not surprised that you say that because this is what you guys do. But yeah, that's the tough part is being compassionate. Even though I say I am and I know I should be, it's an
Yeah,
intellectual
but
thing.
with yourself, like just put your hand on your heart and feel what your heart's doing right now. I'm inviting you to try that.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
It's beaten. it's, it's
Yeah, isn't
probably
it good to notice that you can feel it beating, right?
yeah.
And can you notice the quality of the contact of your hand against your chest? Is it agitated or is it calm?
It's a little agitated.
Yeah, so let's see if you can let your hand give your chest a little more pressure and see if things quiet just a little bit, because usually a little bit more pressure means that you're connecting more deeply to your core.
There's a deep breath.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just notice what that feels like, and notice maybe how your shoulders feel, and if there's any tension in your shoulders, what happens when you just maybe with an intention of you're doing all right, Vince, I'm with you. You just hold that intention with your hand and just let Vince know, this Vince who you're holding right here, that I'm with you. I'm with you right now. You're doing okay. And what do you feel?
It's it's soothing.
Right.
It's
Right.
to the point of being embarrassed a little bit just because I'm not programmed this way,
Uh-huh.
but
But
it is soothing.
and if this were something that you could carry with you more often than just in this moment, what if this was more of your default state instead of the state of like something intense is happening and this intensity is playing all the time?
Yeah.
Just land here right now in this way. And if this were the kind of hand that you could give to Vinny on his shoulder
Mm.
with that stillness and calmness, what kind of information would that give to his nervous system and your nervous system at the same time? So it's less charged.
Mm. Mhm.
And what does your nervous system feel like right now? Because I mean, what you've been carrying is your own lifetime of charge plus the life charge of your son at the same time. And it has felt like a huge emergency, which in one way it really has been. But so this moment of self-holding, this is how I'm going to invite you to think about holding your whole life, holding you, precious you, son of somebody who didn't know how to give this to him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is like a meditation, and this is like a practice. This is like a prayer.
And this is fairly simple to execute.
Right. I'm just holding my heart and inviting you to hold your heart and noticing what I notice in my hand, noticing what I notice in my chest. And you get to meet yourself this way.
There's a lot there, a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not bad, right? It's
No,
not.
no, it's not bad. It's actually pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so
Thank you.
welcome.
Because I will apply all of this. And I knew I reached out to the right person. You know, you're after that moment in the basement, I was like, I got to reach out to Licia and reach out to the source. You know, I'm reading books and going onto the website, but uh, thank you. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but what's going on with you in the foundation? I mean, how has this pandemic? I'm sure it's affected. to a certain degree.
The amazing thing about the pandemic is that we used to always think that we had to have a brick and mortar place in order to do our work and in
Mm,
order to make connections with people. And what we've discovered is that people need to be connected no matter how they can be connected. And if this screen is my way of being connected with you now, I'm going to show up. Right. And so we've been showing up every day for hours and hours. We've been showing up one on one and in groups and in workshops. And now we had a big conference last year that normally happens in person in hotels and conference centers. And historically, the trauma conference has only had maybe 800 to 1,000 people in any given year.
yeah.
Um, and that seems big enough. If you've ever stood in front of 800 or 1,000 people, you know it's nothing to sneeze at.
Right. Right.
But it's also very expensive. And there's so many people who want this knowledge and want this information who couldn't be part of it because who can afford to spend $200 or $300 a night in a hotel and pay for transportation and pay the conference fee of $600 or $700 in order to attend.
Right.
Um, and we held it online last year. And because it was online, it only cost, I think it was 200 for 2 days last year. And this year it's 4 days and it's between 245 and 300 depending on when you pay or if you can get a discount code. Um, Last year we had, I think it was 6,800 people attend.
Wow.
And because now everybody is online and there's a lot of Zoom fatigue, we don't know how many people we're going to get. I'm hoping that we still get around 5 or 6,000 people. You know,
When is it?
it's the last weekend in May. So I think it's May 26th through 30th. Hang on a second. I should know this, right?
I know I've shared it, but I can't remember the date.
Um, okay, the 32nd annual conference is May 26th through 29th, 2021.
Okay. I'll be
And
there.
if you go TraumaCon, I think it's traumacon.traumaresearchfoundation.org, and that gives you the whole lineup. And this year, one of the biggest themes, as always, is attachment. It's understanding how our early life connections set up the maps for how we move through the world, how we see ourselves moving through the world. And understanding, if we understand what those maps look like, we can change them. We can go where we want to go.
That was the key for me, understanding, recognizing the patterns, not saying that I have this or, this is me, this thing, PTSD, whatever. I mean, I've had several diagnoses until they finally got to that, but just recognizing that pattern changed my life. When somebody was able to look at me and said, does this happen? Is it like this? Oh, what you're experiencing is this. I had something to work with. I had something to pay attention to. And then based on that, I was able to start making adjustments. Didn't happen overnight. I would have liked it to, you know what I mean? It was like this come to Jesus moment where I just had to start working more. I had a little fallback where I thought, well, because I know it, I can intellectualize my way through it because I know it. Doesn't work like that. So, but it gave me something. It gave me something tangible that I could start making adjustments and then I could gauge my progress, intensity, frequency, duration. I was able to start looking at these things and say, well, so it's not happening like it used to.
Yeah.
So there's progress being made, and then I could start putting daily practices in place and because it got real nuanced, like it real tricky. Like it would creep up out of nowhere, and I didn't know what was going on. But when I did know what was going on, I didn't always know that I was in pain. I didn't know I was suffering, and then it would just hit me like a ton of bricks. And next, there I am. I'm just looking for an escape somewhere. So I was able to start putting daily practices into place to where I could capture the nuances. If I'm not doing this, and I enjoy doing this, and it's very easy to do that, something might be going on. So I might want to do this self-evaluation. It was hugely beneficial. And then when I learned of the attachment thing, that was life-changing, because now I could go back here and I could really start removing some of the shame that I had for and I could take away any blame that I had for other people. Because I understood, and I understood viscerally. Like it wasn't like I understood intellectually, academically. Like I knew that that was true beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like there was no, I knew it. So I know you're right, but not like just from somebody who's gone through this process and still going through it very much so. And being invited back into it through these circumstances, it it's everything. Like knowing, having an idea of the source, like you said, and then getting a roadmap.
Right, and it's not just the source. I mean, Bessel says you can talk about things until you figure out why you're doing them, but that doesn't mean that you figure out how to stop doing them or change things, right?
No, you don't.
And another person who spoke at last year's conference who's coming back is Tanya Singer, and she's a researcher who researches mindfulness and compassion and self compassion. And for people who have complex trauma, attachment traumas, PTSD, they find that mindfulness in and of itself, without the element of self compassion introduced, it's not as helpful.
That's that is
And
yeah,
so that kind message of I'm with you, I'm here with you, you're you're doing it okay,
yeah,
be nice to yourself. That that takes the looping anxiety that we we loop our faults to ourselves in order to protect ourselves from making mistakes, right?
yeah, yeah,
And all those inner voices that are trying to protect you by telling you you're bad, you can thank them, thank those parts, and say, I'm with you, it's okay, I've got this now.
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
hard, but learning how to trust yourself and trust that you matter enough that when you say that it means something.
Yeah, and it would. I remember the first time I actually felt compassion for those parts, because I understood that there was really no malintent. It was at a certain point that it brought me through. It got me out of the abusive situation, out of poverty. It did. It served its purpose. And then there was a time where I met it with judgment, and I treated it just like I was treated as a child, like judgmental, and and almost like a separate part. I disassociated rather than embracing um, and saying thank you, but we don't need that anymore. We're good. I did this
But
meditation.
also understanding that part well enough that it can let you know the full extent of its terror and why it
Mm,
needs to behave
yeah,
that way. Um, you know, just like kids need to be met, your kid Vinny needs to be met. Our inner kids need to be met too.
that makes
And unless they're met with safety, they're not going to be able to stop being vigilant.
that's gut wrenching, isn't it? Like me, that for me, I don't know if I've fully met that part of me yet. I know it's a necessity, and when you say it, it just makes it more of a necessity. And it's I don't know that I meet it in increments, and I'm still obviously I'm still working through it, because I'll still get caught in those loops. Nowhere near at the frequency, intensity, frequency, duration. It's this compared to what it used to be, and that I don't see myself falling off a cliff. anytime soon, and it hasn't. It's been years, but there's work still to be done. And Vinny's therapist, she's like, I'd like to do EMDR because I know I have a lot stored in the body. I do ketamine therapy. I try to get in there monthly, and I'll go in there fully ready for the experience. And I've been there. I've gone through this process, but the last time I recorded it, and my therapist told me, hey, this is what happens when you go under, like tense. So the body is trying to escape from this. I'm in this pure consciousness. It's
Mhm.
basically chemically induced transcendental meditation because that's what it is to me. Because I've gotten there in meditation and in the float tank, I've been able to access it very briefly because I kick out, like my body wants out. It's so there's so much stored. The body keeps score. Like there's so much stored in here that her name's Alicia too. Alicia, well, not Alicia, but Alicia. And I sometimes I call her Alicia on accident, but she thinks EMDR would do wonders for easing some of that in the body stuff. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's what she tends to think.
You know, I think that being open to exploring in different ways is really important.
I'm completely
And
open.
and I say try it. You know, I tried brain spotting.
Did you?
I did. I recently tried brain spotting because I had some some old PTSD issues that made me a very reactive passenger. So I'm a much better person driving the
Mm,
car than being somebody else's passenger in the car. And
I can relate.
I I had a 15-20 minute session, brain spotting session, where somebody was just like showing me a little bit about the technique. It had one of those antenna sticks with a bright orange bobble on the end, and she kept it at eye level and moved it from one side to the other side and had me follow and check how I felt, what was the intensity of my feeling with this one car memory that I had. And then when I got to a place where it wasn't overwhelming, but I could feel it intensely, I stayed there and breathed there and focused on the bobble at the end of her antenna, and then focused on the wall behind it, and then focused on the bobble, and then focused on the wall behind it. And the feeling dissipated. And maybe part of the reason the feeling dissipated was because I was focusing on the bobble, but I was kind of doing both at the same time. And I didn't know what was going to happen at the end of that session. I
Mhm.
felt I felt a little lighter and was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And I've been able to ride in the car without being reactive as a passenger. Like,
That's
go
amazing.
feel the car wobble and jerk and go, oh, that's how a car moves when it's going on a windy road.
Hmm.
Notice the state of the person who is driving and going, oh, he's actually calm. He actually is comfortable and relaxed and trusts what's happening. And I seem to be all right. And suddenly I was in a completely different car. I was in a completely different body and a completely different mindset, where I wasn't looking for the danger and looking for the life threatening mistake, where I was just able to be present with what was going on.
That's it's
And
amazing.
yeah, yeah. And I say that because I waited a long time for that to happen. Years of really, really going and feeling a lot of terror as a passenger and being a total pain in the ass to the people who were driving.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
What motivated you? Oh, sorry.
what motivated me?
Yeah, finally. You said you waited a long time. What motivated you?
Well, I'd tried lots of different things that didn't work, but this person said, "Hey, I've been doing brain spotting for a couple years and it's amazing and I can't believe how well it works." And I was like, "Oh, I keep hearing about it. What's it like?" And she said, "Come on over, I'll show you." And that was that.
That was that.
Um, and I don't think everything is always that easy. And I have done a lot of work in my life, probably a
Yeah.
lot of work to get to the place where I was comfortable doing that piece of work.
And you can let yourself go, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
what a thing to have an opportunity and catch it.
that's yeah, that's that's what this book was to me. It was I sent you that episode where
Yeah.
I was, just giving my visceral take on what trauma was. The whole thing was on trauma.
Yeah.
And then my co-host at the time, he didn't know much, about trauma. He's a recovering alcoholic, real big in the recovery community. He's a recovery coach, and somebody in his where he was a recovery coach said, read this book. And he showed up with the book, and he said, yeah, this book, you got to read it. And that was it. It was done. So that to me was that I don't always take a book that somebody gives me and read it right away. A lot of times it'll sit on a shelf until like 3, 4 different passes of, okay, the Reverend said it, so I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah.
This was one of those things where the opportunity presented itself, and everything changed. And I think that EMDR is the same thing. I think she presented it at a time where I'm just willing to do whatever, no matter what. And what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. Okay.
Well,
Try something else.
just be curious because you don't know
Right.
what's going to happen and you don't know how it's going to happen. It's more like you get to go in and notice what's happening before and after and during. You just
Yeah.
want to stay present with yourself and accept. And I just like I'm sure every therapy session, every ketamine session, every EMDR session that you have will be different. No two sessions will be the same.
That makes sense.
You don't
I'm
drink
looking forward.
twice. Yeah, yeah,
I am. I look forward to everything now.
yeah.
I don't want bad things to happen, but I seem to be able to take it in stride.
Uh-huh.
If
Uh-huh.
if any if anything, like there's so many things all at once that just landed right on my head. I should have been in a gutter somewhere, like years ago. This would have broke me, and I wouldn't have seen it coming. That moment where I fell and collapsed, I wouldn't have seen that coming. I would have been subconsciously plotting my escape, right? Like, and then I would have found the opportune time, and I would have made the escape, and I wouldn't have had to feel that. And it's not I wouldn't have had the opportunity to feel that because I would have instinctively bowed out through some kind of self-destructive behavior. And yeah, even coming on air with you, and doing this in a public forum, I knew it'd be tough for me. I don't like being vulnerable still, even though I know it's so important, and I have to, but I have to intentionally do it and put myself in places to where,
Uh-huh.
it's how I'm opening those neural pathways still. And is okay. Well, you're probably going to tear up a little bit, any kind of cool persona you think you have, it's going to be diminished because I don't have it anyway. That's in my head still that it's necessary. But yeah, I just keep knocking them down.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you being on.
Glad you're being present with this. I really sense that you are.
Here comes my co-host.
Hello.
Hi.
The beauties of the pandemic, you get to do it at home, and then your kids get to pop in.
Dad.
Yes, son.
Would it be okay if me and Amber and I just headed to the lake for like 15 minutes?
Absolutely, honey.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Where's your brother? Sorry, Alicia. Okay. All right. Yeah. So there's her. She's a joy.
What's your daughter's name?
Sophia.
Sophia. And how old is she?
She is she just turned 10.
Wow.
Turned 10. Yeah, Vinny will be 13. And Ambra is so speaking of connection, I met, so I have the human condition, right? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with impact theory. They're higher learning, higher consciousness. So impact theory has a university where it's kind of like a Tony Robbins type, but it's I know of it. And so she works at Impact Theory, and she was following the human condition. She didn't know who I was, and why should she? And so we just started liking each other's stuff. She's in France, and part time between LA and France, but she was in France, kind of stuck for the pandemic. And she posted something one night. She's a writer also, and it was real deep and visceral, and I was attracted to her, and I was like, hey, I don't want to say anything because I just don't. Like I was nervous to say anything because there was the attract. If I wasn't attracted to her, then I would have just said some writing stuff and let it be that. And I was like, but I can't not pet, and I can't not tell an artist that I feel that what they just said. So I did, and then we did a Zoom call, and it like I've never felt that connected to anybody in my life immediately. But then so the ego kicks in, and I'm trying to offset it, trying to, and there's got to be something wrong. You know what I mean? This is what my head's doing. And the one thing that Zoom did that it took out all the first date stuff where you're going to a place and you're trying to impress, and all the physical stuff was eliminated. So it was kind of like being in junior high where you just talk and talk, and if you don't want to talk, well, you stop talking. But the connection just got deeper and deeper and deeper. And anyway, long story short, she's here now. She just got in from France on Tuesday. From that day, we Valentine's Day, we were on for 8 hours. And it was a real deep connection on every level, because all we could do was ask each other questions and learn about each other. And it turns out, this is where I threw all the garbage out, where I was trying to, she would say things, lines. There weren't lines. It was just her talking. But I would be reminded of a piece of poetry that I wrote. Like, I've been writing poetry about it for about 15 years. So it'd be a line from this poetry that I had just kind of forgotten. And so I'd be like, hold on, what'd you just say? And then I'd go back and I'd read this poetry that I'm like, here, look at that. She's like, oh my God. It happened like 16 times, where she was reciting or saying lines from poetry that I'd written. And I was like, I've been writing about you. That's how in relationships that weren't good, there was this fantasy woman. I didn't believe this existed in real life at all. So I would write, there would be a good end to, a negative situation. I would write this positive outcome, scrap it, not scrap it, but it was just off to the, and she came out reciting, and I was like, all right, well, I'm throwing it all out. All this nonsense that I'm talking right now, I'm in, and she's here. So anyway, that's who Amber is. She just asked.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was
happy for you.
Opportunity, like you said. If I was still hyper vigilant to the extent that I was, that goes. I find a way to make that not real, So anyway, I don't know how this turned into.
That's okay, because your daughter came out and said she's
Yeah.
walk with her. So I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk tonight.
So am I. So am I, and I'm glad that I know people are going to take value from this, and there's somebody listening who really needed to hear, myself included, what we talked about. So I appreciate it.
Come back another time and do more embodied experiencing kinds of things with you and your audience if you want it. That would be a joy for me.
Absolutely, because I'm gonna practice it tonight.
Okay.
I'm gonna practice it tonight. So I again, I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the work that you and Bessel are doing. I'm gonna be there on the 29th, so I'll be one of the 5,000, and let's just put that into existence right now.
Great. And so send me a link for where this is going to be posted, because I'd love to see some of the responses too.
I will. I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Great seeing you.
You too.
You are in my heart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You are too. You're in my heart as well, and all the work that you guys do. It's here. It's a lifesaver. So I appreciate it. Have a good night, and I'll get to everybody's questions. I promise. They'll be there, and I'm just no good at because so anyway, thank you, Licia.
Thanks
have a good night.
You too. Bye, Vince.
And I'll send you the link.
Okay.
All right. Good night. All right, everyone. That's the human condition. I promise I'll get to the I saw there were a bunch of them, and I know I didn't get to them, but So on Sunday, we're continuing the Nature of Consciousness series with Glenn McIntosh. So that'll be on Sunday at 6 p.m. I'll be posting the event for that. And Ambra Salzba, the one I just spoke about, who just got in from France, we'll be talking about connection. And what have we got? There's other stuff. There's so many things coming up right now. I'm just going ham on this. So anyway, love you guys. Thank you for always tuning in, the great questions, comments, and let's keep this thing going. Have a good night.